There was a story yesterday that Dan Orlovsky was saying that we have to have the same energy about Shedeur Sanders that we did about Baker Mayfield.
Dan Orlovsky, you mean the guy that made me shed tears with the beautiful story about his son?
First and first, mostly, you're right, Rich. Last week was Autism Awareness Week.
That was the most beautiful story where his son's artwork decorated the ESPN studio.
It really that
made me cry.
So touching.
That made me cry as much as the dude from Love on the Spectrum, Tanner, on the Kelly Clarkson show, meeting Jack Black.
That was incredible. Yeah, that show itself, Love on the Spectrum, is incredible. Shout out to Connor and Tanner. But yeah, Dan Orlovsky's son, that was beautiful. I shed one Vato tear. You know I don't have many of them.
Yeah, dude, I don't know if you know, Vatos have 96 teardrops they could use in their life, right?
That's true, and I used one for Orlovsky. So everything I say is, respectfully. He says, we can't praise Baker Mayfield and fall in love with Baker Mayfield because of his riz. He didn't say that. But he said because of his charisma, cockiness, and his self-belief, and then kind of view it different with Shedeur. So that's Dan Orlovsky on the criticisms of Shedeur Sanders. Now, do I understand what he's saying? Do we understand what he's saying? Absolutely, I get it, right? What's good for the goose should be good for the gander or whatever. We got to treat these things equally. However, I want to remind everybody, I don't think we all loved Baker Mayfield in the beginning.
That is 100% accurate.
Right?
That's
we gave Baker Mayfield so much flack about his dance moves and his cockiness and his commercials and his dedication to football. Like, we gave that dude so much. He just played his heart out so hard and proved us all wrong, and he kind of won us over. I think the same should apply for Shedeur. If that's how you view Shedeur, then in the same way, then yeah, he's gonna or he should win you over eventually with his dedication to the game and his toughness.
I think that's the one hole in the Dan Orlovsky analysis of Shedeur and Baker. You're 100% right.
Thank you. Yeah, I love Orlovsky. I'm not coming at him. I'm just saying I don't agree with that because I root for Mayfield now. But I remember not liking the guy.
No, there were times where Covino would come on the show and be like, look at him doing his stupid dance. He hasn't proven anything. We grew to love Baker because his cockiness was checked a little bit.
His cockiness went into confidence.
But it was humbled.
Right. Humility.
It was, as your mom hates when you say humbleness.
I say humbleness. My mom says, it's humility, you idiot.
His humility is what made you love Baker Mayfield. When he saw some tough times and you're like, all right, this cocky kid got checked a little bit, and he came out on the other side humble with his humbleness. It's humility. And I think that's why we love Baker. I've always thought there was a big difference between cocky and confident. And I think this applies very much to the dating world because, listen, let's be honest, it's all the same, right? The workplace, dating, sports, it's all just personality traits.
And relationships, yeah.
When you're dating, when you're a single man and you're in the dating scene or a single lady, what's up, Beyonce? I always thought the difference between confidence and cocky was the ability to laugh at yourself and not take yourself serious. You could be a guy that's like, man, that guy's pretty cocky. But if he is always okay to be the butt of the joke, he makes fun of himself, he doesn't take himself serious.
He does it with a smile?
He could be cocky, but people are like, nah, it's a confidence. Cocky is when someone is so sure of themselves, but my goodness, don't you dare question them because like they don't like the joke ever at their expense.
Cockiness borders on arrogance, right? And what is the eliminator of that? Like I think Rich just said it, like doing it with a smile and just a true belief in yourself. That's confidence.
We work with people. I'm not going to say here or there or when, but there's people that get in their own way because I'm like, they're cocky. Like
and that rubs everybody the wrong way.
We need some names right here, guys.
Yeah, no, no, but there's a fine line. Like I'll use myself as an example just to keep other people out of the conversation.
Oh, I know, cocky.
I feel like that's the vibe that I might give off until you really get to know me, and you're like, oh, yeah, this guy doesn't take himself that serious,
like,
or he does it with a smile.
I can see
I
where
just
people
have resting D face, and people would assume that about me.
Yeah, but
You're resting your face? Resting D face?
Resting D face, yeah.
Resting D face.
Resting D face.
I do think
face.
Covino's one of those guys you could look at and be like, he's cocky, but then you realize the fact that Covino can make fun of himself and, takes a joke.
No, he's confident.
He's not cocky. It's funny. So
what's the difference between cockiness and confidence? Dan Orlovsky, again, props to him.
And his amazing son?
His amazing son. He said, now this was yesterday, right? Because there's an update. He says, we can't praise Baker Mayfield and fall in love with Baker Mayfield because of his charisma, cockiness, and self-belief, and then kind of view it differently with Shedeur. I do agree with that. But what I said before, I'll say it again. You have to remember, Baker Mayfield sort of earned everybody's respect. He graduated from cockiness to confidence, because when I think about the difference, yeah, confidence comes with a smile. Confidence also comes with you're backed by results. Mayfield proved to everybody that he was a bona fide NFL player and he could ball.
But not only that, he was, I think he bumped into the Iron Cheek.
Yeah.
Because he was humbled.
He was, and I know what you mean by that too, Rich. And there's so many personal examples you could sort of tie in if you want. I remember my uncle telling me, I was heartbroken, dude. Heartbroken over a girl one time. And then I think I got fired from a job or whatever, but I was heartbroken over a girl.
Oh, that was Steve's no good, very bad day?
It was Steve Covino's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, right?
Fired and dumped.
And I remember why?
Oh, and your pet's head fell off, right?
She was the best thing that happened in my whole life. And I remember my uncle saying to me, I went to my uncle for advice. What should I do? How do I get her back? And he's like, you want to know something? Let me be honest with you. He's like, I like you better this way. I'm like, why? He's like, because you're humble now. You've been humbled for the first time. Because you know what I thought? Nothing could stop this guy. I was arrogant, and I was cocky, and I was backed by nothing and no results. It was just in my own head and my own belief. So that's the difference between cockiness and confidence. The humility. Again, the results. Yeah, Deion Sanders is great, but he still has a lot to prove, and that's fine. I'm sure he will. But I think we need to remember that we didn't all love Baker Mayfield.
No, he
that
was
came after all the humility, the humbleness,
course.
and again, proving that he could play in the NFL. Not saying that I'm not rooting for Shador. I'm a big Deion Sanders fan. Absolutely rooting for the kid. But as Orlovsky said again today, now here's the update. He might be one of the hardest QBs that he ever had to rate.
And I understand that based
hardest
on his
quarterback to evaluate.
Based on his assessment, and it's because the offensive line stunk. So,
but he's saying he has elite field vision and everything else.
Yeah.
But it's just so hard.
And also, a lot of his throws
5 yards.
Right off the line of scrimmage.
Because with a bad O-line, this guy was making quick decisions. You don't really have a lot of looks at Shedeur. But to wrap up what you're saying about Baker, Baker was tested, and we saw Baker fail a little bit and fall. And like you getting dumped and losing your job, old Steve Covino.
Yeah.
You were humbled. Humility kicks in, and I think we got to see Baker, laying on his back.
Yeah, humanizes you. People relate to you more, and I think we don't view Baker Mayfield that way anymore because of all that. So that's the difference. And like you said, Rich, before, confidence comes with a smile. Cockiness, you're just tooting your own horn the whole time. Yeah. You haven't really proven it to anyone.
There's hosts like that here on our network, ESPN, CBS, Fox, you name it. There's people that you look at and go, why are you taking yourself so serious? Like the ability to laugh at yourself, I always say that when it comes to dating as well. What makes a guy cocky or confident with women? A confident guy is sure of himself, but he's also okay being vulnerable in front of the woman, acting silly, being the butt of the joke if he does something, goofy. That's confidence. A cocky guy is a guy that if someone even chuckles or laughs at him, he's like, what are you laughing at me for?
It's just really insecurity is what it boils down to.
It's insecurity and it's put offish, and I think that...
Again, and there's a fine line of arrogance too, right? So, yeah, there's... The difference between cockiness and confidence is a thin line, but there's a significant line there.
And I'm not wishing this for him, but let's say Shedeur goes to the NFL, right?
Yeah, dude, we wish nothing but the greatest success for him.
And he follows a Baker blueprint in that, let's say he ends up, I'm just picking a team, the Giants. I know they seem stacked in the QB room right now, but let's say he did go there, and he had a really rough go at it. And the media was rough on him, and it was like, man, Shedeur stinks. And then he got a chance on a second team, and he lit it up. We'd all be like, there he is. is. Like
Well,
it's
you
almost
could
like
also think about his dad, right? His dad might be the cockiest guy that ever walked.
remember his dad during the draft told teams,
Yeah.
"I'm not going to look at your playbook. When's your draft pick?
Yeah, but
I'm not
remember,
I'll be gone by then."
dude, I remember watching the Yankees when a young Deion Sanders, neon Deion Sanders, before he was primetime Deion Sanders, neon Deion would get in the batter's box and draw a $ in the batter's box, and he was the most flashy dude with jerry curl, right? But again, he eventually backed that up with results when you realize, like, oh, he's not necessarily cocky. He's confident, and he proves it. His son is cut from the same cloth. Will he prove it? Absolutely. I think he will. But I think that's the difference. That's the difference.
To me, confidence is unspoken. It doesn't need to be explained. Like, you don't tell people, "Oh, I'm confident."
Yeah, the results.
Very similar to when you see very wealthy people, like these billionaires. Like, remember there was a joke, I know we all hate him now, but like where we saw Elon Musk's kitchen, and it was like that old dated 90s wood.
Yes.
Or like how sometimes you see like the CEO of Apple, and he's out and he's just wearing like polos and khakis and a polo. And like they're not flashy at all because they don't have to be.
You don't have to prove
because
it.
they know underneath they're sitting on near $1 trillion. Similar with confidence and cockiness. Like, you don't need to say, "I'm confident." You don't need to prove you're confident. You don't need to act confident. You just are confident.
And you know what? People pick up on that, though. That's the thing. And I think that's what cocky people don't understand is everyone else sees it. Like,
But
dude, you're full
hold
of hot
on, though.
air.
I do want to point out that we can't discount what a cool characteristic it is for a Shedeur Sanders to be so confident.
Yeah, because
borderline cocky, where
in every stage of
he
his life.
said that wherever I go, I will change the culture. Some people look at that and say, "Who do you think you are?" And then other people are like,
I am.
So other people are like, it's hard not to almost admire that level of confidence.
Dude, you know what, though?
He's saying wherever I go, I will bring a winning culture. And he's a kid.
And if he does that, then he's proven and he's awesome, and we root him on moving forward. So, again, why aren't we treating Shedeur Sanders' confidence the same way we treated Baker Mayfield? Baker Mayfield was hated on in the beginning.
Yeah. So, I think I'm actually very curious where this guy
And by
lands.
the way, I'm not even saying me. That's sort of the perception, I would say. If you follow social media or what people are saying on TV or what you sort of get from him, he's hard to evaluate because he does have an insane level of cockiness or confidence, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell with these teams what's real, what's a smokescreen, what they're lying about, who they're really looking at. And DB reported earlier that he's going to take a meeting with the Steelers for one of their top 30 meetings. Now, they picked 21. So if he slides all the way down to 21, does that humble you, or does that put a fire under you and you're like one of the two quarterbacks we know so well who said, "Oh, those other teams made a mistake. I'm going to show them."
I do love that thought. Like, it could light a fire. But let me ask you this. Do you remember, it was on the primetime 30 for 30. Maybe you, Dan Byer, I or Sam will remember. Deion Sanders told a team when primetime was getting drafted, a team almost offered the playbook, and he's like, "When's your draft pick?" And he declined because he's like, "Nah, I'll keep your playbook. I won't be on the board by then." And I remember people at that time were like, "How cocky could you be?" And let's be honest, if you're Deion Sanders and it's 30 years ago, you think you're gonna if you got a late round pick, you think Deion's still gonna be on the board? I love that. I love that cockiness.
Yeah.
In that regard, but
when you back it up by results,
confidence,
man.
not cockiness.
All right, so that's our take on it.